We are live now. Welcome, everyone. I'm Felipe, CEO of Disruptive Academy. We are a company that helps companies to challenge the status quo through tailor-made trainings and consultancy for any size of companies. And you can find more about us by browsing disruptive.academy. And you can also check our latest webinars by clicking on the webinar section on the menu or accessing directly disruptive.academy/webinars. I want to give a special thank you to our supporters at DVB, Condor Connect, and Sababa Security that helped us to spread the message and promote the webinar. And thank you for being connected with us today. Please follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn using Disruptive Academy profiles. And if you want to share this content on your social media, please tag us on Instagram using disruptive.academy. And this link to join this live webinar, it's on our bio right now. So if you share with your friends and your audience, they will be able to join us right now. We'll repost the content too. And today is a very special day for us. We are receiving Professor Jerome Engel from University of California in Berkeley. And we are going to talk about innovation, clusters of innovation, and practical cases on how to apply this knowledge on small and mid-sized companies. Not only UC Berkeley is important for us, but our three partners in the company, Alessio, Luis, and I, met at Jerry's program called the Innovative Organization, From Idea to Success, back in October 2018. And our CSO, Alessio, will be your host for today. And we are back in class to listen and learn about innovation with Professor Jerome Engel. Thank you very much one more time and welcome aboard, Jerry and Alessio.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Felipe, for the great introduction. Thank you, everybody, for connecting, and especially big thanks to Professor Jerome Engel for accepting our invitation and join our episode of Innovation Matters. Just a very short introduction from my side on logistics. Yes, this is an episode of a series of webinars, so you can register for the future webinars. We will get great guests every time. And if you have any question, you can submit the questions through the chat, through all the social media, and we will do our best to reply during the webinar or to follow up in the following days. But now I don't want to steal time, and I want to pass the mic to Professor Jerome Engel to share his presentation and his view, and we will come back together a bit later for a few questions. Thank you, everybody.
Well, it's really wonderful to be with everybody today and be able to talk with you from Berkeley. With COVID, it has its disadvantages that we're all, some of us are ill and some of us are healthy, and there are many challenges in business, with business being disrupted. But the advantage is we are all together in this electronic community. And so thank you very much for this invitation and allowing me to join with you today. Our conversation today is going to be drawn from my background, which is, yes, I'm a professor at the university, but I have spent most of my career outside the university. And I have been a venture capitalist. I've founded 2 venture capital funds. I've been an entrepreneur. I've founded several businesses, of course. And I had my background in big business for 20 years, essentially working with Ernst & Young and KPMG.
Professor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is there any way you can be a bit closer to the microphone, because we hear you a bit far? I'm sorry for that.
I think perhaps. Is that better?
Now it's great. Now it's perfect.
Yes. Well, it's simply some electronic connection that I'm not going to try and figure out. So I know that this microphone is now picking me up. I bet many of us have had this experience on Zoom or some other telecommunications, that it's always some connection. So this is working now?
Yes, it works perfectly now. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, so anyway, Our agenda today, we're going to talk about the challenge of innovation, how innovation happens, what it looks like when it happens so you can see it, how we put it to work for us, right? And how we harvest innovation from the ecosystem. Because the big challenge is, especially with small and medium-sized businesses, is we don't have the resources to create new inventions or to really experiment with our business model because we have to run our business on a day-to-day basis. So how can we be innovative when we're so busy running our business on a day-to-day basis? And my fundamental premise is going to be that we have to partner or acquire innovation from outside the organization and learn how to bring it inside the organization or partner with it in a way to bring it that value proposition to our customers in the most efficient way. And this is what we call open innovation. And it's a concept we've discussed for decades, actually, the last 20 years, but usually we focus on major enterprises and how they've struggled with commercializing their internal research. And this is what open innovation used to mean. But now it's much more about meaning how we partner and be efficient. So I have a lot of concepts I want to get across. So what I'm going to do is quickly, if you will, 15, 20 minutes, introduce these concepts, and then we'll have a discussion. So the challenge, if you look at it from my university's perspective, is how you can not only be innovative, but also lead through innovation, because you want your customers to perceive you as a leader, not a follower. It's hard to do innovation and it's hard to be perceived as a leader. And one of the reasons it's hard is because the world is changing so fast, from analog to digital to the internet to social to mobile. All these things compound and it's not going to slow down. Now, the father of a lot of the theory behind this is Clayton Christensen, who recently passed away. But if you want to read some of the original work in the area, it's very accessible, very easy reading. The Innovator's Dilemma is an excellent resource. So you look at electrical vehicles and you look back at General Motors, you say, well, they've really missed the boat. They were slow to electrical vehicles. They were actually very early. This is an electrical vehicle that they essentially were ready to commercialize in 2000. And they were introducing it. And by 2002, they had not only introduced it, but they had given up on the idea. And they had actually removed from the market a very successful vehicle, the EV1. And, people were like shocked that the vehicle worked and then they gave up on it. And there's testimonials online that you can hear from Danny DeVito and others about this. But that's the innovation that Elon Musk harvested. So we all give credit to a great entrepreneur like Elon Musk for having these great insights. But he didn't come up with the insight. There were many people with it. It actually had been commercialized. The commercialization had actually been proven as possible. And he took the risk to create a business whose only business was electrical vehicles. And that was his innovation, where General Motors had it as a small activity relative to their internal combustion activity. So the challenge for us in innovation is not sometimes recognizing what a good idea is, but are we going to commit to it? And how do we commit the resources in a way that doesn't make our overall business what we would say cannibalized or destroyed by the innovation? So is this a big problem? This is a survey I think you can access online. I know you can, from CB Insights. If you're interested in looking at surveys and numbers, essentially this survey, reached out to 677 senior innovation executives and CEOs from all around the world. And their finding was that they did not think their organizations were effective at innovation. And the findings are very interesting, but the one I want to really share with you is that companies, and probably your own company, focus on innovation, but they focus on incremental innovation. And we're going to talk today briefly about the difference between incremental and disruptive innovation, right? Because this is our topic. It's about the disruptiveness of innovation. So when we look to our customers for innovation, for new ideas, and what would our existing customers want, we always end up with incremental innovation because our customers look to us for our existing product or service. And when we ask them what they would like, or we try and investigate what would be different, they expect certain things from us, and they're only going to tell us small differences from what we currently do. So our current employees and our current customers are not a great source of information. They give us sort of short-term, small steps. But the challenge is that technology is moving quickly and requires big steps. So there's going to be a big gap between what the market makes possible through technology change and what our organization internally can do. So we're going to address how an organization meets this challenge, that technology requires this sort of quick response, but that it's very difficult for our organizations to respond quickly. And when we fail to do this, we end up like, you know, like DEC. You know, it was a leader in mini computers, and it should be a leader in personal computers and in cell phones, but it's gone. Doesn't even exist anymore. BlackBerry should be a leader in the smartphone. It was the leader in the email phone, but it never made the jump to the smartphone. And these companies, if you have their coffee cups, it's all that's left of them. So when do we see innovation happening around us? It's happening right now. We're all on, telecommunications. You're on Zoom or some other platform, and we're having, these types of shocks. You see these trends, and then you have a shock. The trends existed, for a long time, telecommunications, the internet, but all of a sudden you have COVID, and take the universities, for instance, where I work. They're totally disrupted. We're all online now, and there are new commercial universities coming into existence out of nowhere that are offering as effective or even more effective online education. You might call it Zoom University. And it's a joke, but now you can get your Zoom University t-shirt, right? So this is not a joke. Fundamentally, universities are being disrupted, and a lot of second tier and third tier universities are going to find themselves challenged as we come out of COVID, that their businesses are not going to really resume, that they're going to lose a lot of the marginal business that made the difference between survival and failure. Zoom, all of a sudden, market capitalization exceeds that of the 7 major airlines. Why do I choose that as a comparison? Because rather than flying to Brazil to give this talk, I'm here talking to you on Zoom. So that market capitalization gives them the power. So how is this relevant to you? It's relevant to you because when you can adopt to a disruptive change, when you can innovate, all of a sudden you have so much market power compared to your competitors, because your customers will give you that market power. Is this a new idea? No, it's not a new idea. I can go back through history and give you quotes from very famous people 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, all predicting work from home. But it took a shock. And how do we see these shocks? Well, sometimes it's an external shock like X Prize, stimulated space travel and commercial space travel. Sometimes it's COVID. So the classic view is that innovation is a consistent flow. And where do we want to be in this consistent flow between research and commercialization? We want to be in this sweet zone, the yellow space of rapid evolution of ideas and business model experimentation. But the easy place to be there is to let others do the hard work. Let universities or big corporations do the hard lifting of figuring out where the new ideas are. That's not the place for small and medium-sized business. We are not supposed to do the hard research. But by being close to our universities and monitoring what's going on, we can identify the new trends. We can identify the people who might be able to commercialize them. We can identify the small businesses that have the new ideas. And we, the entrepreneurs, can work to commercialize them, and then allow the major corporations perhaps to exploit them on a global level. And we can partner with them to distribute our products globally. So it's a partnership in understanding where you fit in the ecosystem to operate in this sweet spot. These waves of innovation happen over and over again in different fields. And we could discuss, examples in every area of technology. But one consistent thing we would see is that when new technology platforms arise, you have a chance for disruptive innovation. And again, that's different than these small incremental innovations, which big business will always be the best at, because that's what they're doing. BMW is making their car a little bit better. They're not doing the disruptive thing. It takes Tesla to come in and introduce a new platform, and then the BMWs and the General Motors catch up at this crossover point where you see the green line cross over the blue. So that's what disruption looks like. So when you see a new platform, like when the iPhone came out, when you see a new platform like Airbnb, a new business model for utilizing, hospitality in a new way, a new business model like Uber, making everybody a small business person able to earn some income in their spare time with a car they already own. You see a new business model like Amazon, where it's not the technology so much, but their commitment to reinvesting in growth. When you hear major companies, say, we're all digital companies today, we're all technology businesses. When you see whole chains of retail businesses sort of disappear, like Blockbuster, you see these disruptions happen, you're in the midst of a tsunami, and that's where we are right now. So whether it was a telephone that was a new platform, it was now it's the internet and commercialization of retail into a totally distributed ecosystem, you're recognizing that there are going to be trends that are going to bring up new players. And that's what we see in the entrepreneurial space. The disruption of big players by all these new players, no matter what field you're looking at. So as we look at this emergence of entrepreneurship, what's the next new platform that's happening? It's going to be artificial intelligence. And you say, well, I'm a small and medium-sized business. What can I do with artificial intelligence? There will be emerging tools that will be plug and play. In other words, that you can harvest on a service basis, utilize on a service basis, that will allow you to learn about your customer base if you're capturing the right data, and allow you to make great decisions to bring better services to your customers. It might be in digital health, it might be in cybersecurity. So how do I harvest it? And this is the core of our message for today. It's about open innovation. Open innovation means looking at the ecosystem that you reside in. And we talked about clusters of innovation at the introduction to the talk. And we look at a cluster of innovation. It has 7 components, and you're on this map. You can look at this map and say, where do I sit? Am I at a university? No. Yes. Am I an entrepreneur? Am I, a venture capital investor? Maybe. Am I an existing major corporation? Am I a young and emerging business? Am I management in an existing business? Am I an accountant, lawyer, whatever? Am I in government? But wherever you are, you exist in this ecosystem. You're on this map. Pardon my lousy drawing. I'm not a good artist. And so how does the existing corporation engage with this? Where do they look for the innovation? And what I'm suggesting is you look to the small and medium-sized businesses in your ecosystem to see who's introducing interesting products that you can partner with or enrich your offering. Maybe you can look at trends in your local economy of where investors are putting their money. They can help you identify who are the interesting entrepreneurs. So from a corporate perspective, even if you're a fairly small business, you can look into this ecosystem and see how can I partner? Who is out there? Because it's a lot less expensive to partner with these sources of innovation than it is to try and create that innovation internally. So there are strategies, whether it's acquiring the companies that have the technology, investing in them, or creating new businesses with them in partnership. But all these strategies require different tools. And that's some of the things we can discuss in our discussion period, whether it's investing in them, partnering with them, or creating new startups. So with that, I just want to say that it's key to recognize that this partnership between the small business or the emerging idea and the existing corporation, that's what brings scale and speed. It's not your typical merger or acquisition. It's using this special toolkit of open innovation. It'll put you in this sweet spot of rapid innovation. We see this as a strategy by major corporations. They do it by investing a lot of dollars. There's other ways of investing a lot of money. You can achieve the speed and scale of innovation. It can be a win-win opportunity. You can collaborate with your entire ecosystem. So that's been our agenda. And I want to come back to you, Alicio, and have a conversation about these issues.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, colleagues are sending me some questions from the audience, and also we had some, let's say, prepared questions. Yes, I want to go a bit further in the last topic you introduced, Professor, because what often happens is that when we deal with medium companies, yes, small and medium companies, maybe are companies owned by the same family from 2 or 3 generations, doing the same stuff, yes, doing the same type of goods. They see the commoditization, so it's becoming commodity, the stuff. It's produced somewhere else for a cheaper price. They do a bit of incremental innovation, yes, better quality, better fit. And when we tell them, oh, you need to work on the ecosystem, you need to look for startup, partner with them, do invest in minor stakes. For them, this is extremely difficult to make it concrete because they said, oh, but we are here in a small province of Brazil or Italy, and where to find this ecosystem, where to start, where to go to look for startups. If I have a company that was run by my grandfather and we are doing bulbs, where I should look. It's geography is important. It's time zone. It's what is more important in your opinion?
I think a thing to recognize is that in this example that you gave, let's stick with this example. It's a multi-generation company that's established, right? It's not going out of business. It's not under stress. It has some positive cash flow. It has existing customers. It has a brand. It has reputation, but it's stuck. Let's say it's not very innovative, and it's under stress because is it keeping up with the times? The thing to recognize is that that company has a wonderful asset, and that asset is its reputation and its customers. So even though it's relatively small and it may feel like, oh, we're not so innovative, it has this from a startup's perspective, from a young company's perspective, from an early stage company's perspective, this multi-generation small business has this wonderful asset of steady cash flow and customers. So there's an opportunity from a startup to say, I want to partner because I want to bring my value to those customers. I want a distribution channel. So maybe it's expanding the offering so that you're bringing your capability of customers to the startup. So you say, where do I look for it? Almost every community has a community of accelerators and investors and universities. Almost every community has, you don't have to be in Sao Paulo, but I mean, Sao Paulo would be easy, right? You don't have to be in Rio. I mean, you can be in the north, you can be in the south. You have a great technology community in the south of Brazil. there are local centers of entrepreneurship and new young companies. So you can tell me where they are. And you have the thing to recognize is that the small company has a great thing to offer. Even though you might say, well, we're not so innovative. Well, why would they want to talk to us? You can just go and ask. If you can get into the community where these entrepreneurs are developing new ideas, they're happy to meet with you and share what is their view of the business, what is their view of customers, what do they think the needs are of those customers. And then you can look into your own customer base and say, well, do we have any of those customers that may want this capability? And can we partner with them to help bring that capability? Because the hardest thing for these young companies is to get access to customers, because customer acquisition is so difficult. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense. And I think sometimes these, say, family-owned company, they should recognize that on top of the technology of the products, of the service they sell, they have a great assets that are the loyal customers. Because when you have somebody who is your customers from 10 to 20, 30, 40 years, you have a trust relationship with them. And that's something that the small startups strongly need, because if they go to get along to these customers, there is no trust, there is no knowledge, there will not be maybe clear and transparent feedback. But if it's me, who have a company from 50 years and have a good relationship with customer, bringing something new from my partner, startup, and innovative, I will be perceived as somebody who can give you something new, and you will trust automatically this startup because a trusted entity, yes, is bringing it to you. Does that sound right?
Exactly. You have a huge asset. So, not to repeat too much, but the first step might be to say, for the small company, the old small company that's been multi-generation, what are my key assets? And this trust relationship with existing customers, it's a huge asset. And how can I expose that asset to get more value out of it? Now, we don't want to put those relationships at risk, because they're important. But how, maybe you do it with a small subset of your customers and have an offering, and you have in a partnership with a young company and that has a new product or service. Maybe you have a trial offering with a small subset, and you get feedback from your customers, and you bring that feedback into the process of creating the end product that you then take at scale.
Yeah. Clear. Great. I want to touch another point of your presentation. Yes, you say that sometimes the big external factors, can be the driver of innovation, or, for example, I don't know, internet digitalization, cloud adoption. Yes, was a big trend that actually influenced a lot the way we live and obviously the way we consume information and so on. What are, in your opinion, the next big trends? What will dramatically change our life and our way to do business?
I think the big trend is going to be something I like to call micro-segmentation.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is we're going to see artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. They're tied together, right? And they're very broad trend. And you wouldn't expect, a local small business to say, okay, I'm going to be an artificial intelligence company. I mean, that's too big a step. But you're going to have this micro segmentation where, in other words, platform companies like cloud computing companies are a platform. Artificial intelligence capabilities are a platform. They're struggling right now to figure out how to apply that capability. And they're going to do it through micro-segmentation. What does that mean? Let's take Brazil as an example. And please, if my facts are bad, correct my facts. But I think in Brazil, you have a fairly large population, at least relative to the United States, of what we would call the unbanked. In other words, some segment of the population that at this time does not have credit cards or bank accounts. And they're not in the, they're the lower income people on a survival income, maybe not with access to a steady wage. Well, what's a micro application? Well, I know, I've learned from my students, I don't know if it still exists, but I know a couple years ago, the government had put an imposition on the banks in Brazil to reach out to the unbanked, to extend banking. So there was some subsidy or incentive. I don't know exactly what it was. But how can they do that? How can they take the risk? And initially, how to take that risk was seen as an expense. Okay, I have a government regulation. I have to reach out, but I'm not really going to make money because these people aren't profitable. But I will do it because the government says I must. Well, we had a student group at the university from Brazil who said, I can use artificial intelligence to evaluate these new customers in a new way because there's data that the banks are not using. Because these people are not in the banking system. They don't have credit cards, so there's not the traditional credit score data. And they were looking for data that they could use. And you know what? This population has cell phones. You know, even though they don't have bank accounts, they have cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone. I mean, I've traveled in Nepal and in Africa, and you know what? You go out into the rural districts, guess what? It's still cell phones. People are subsistence farmers, and they still have cell phones. So a micro segmentation was to say, how do I take artificial intelligence and credit analysis and apply it to cell phone data to do strong correlations with credit worthiness? And, you know, this is not what the Grameen Bank, you know, we might know about the Grameen Bank and what they did with micro lending, but you sort of take that experience a little bit, but you bring it. And this company, you know, did this micro segmentation of a broad platform of technology, artificial intelligence, to, you know, this little market, if you will. Little meaning not global, little meaning just the unbanked portion underneath the bank portion, and meaning maybe just for one or two banks. And that's how the bank, you know, worked with this young company to extend something that the bank saw as a cost into perhaps a profitable market. So is that a good example for you?
Yes, it's a great example, and I really fully agree that simplifying, maybe oversimplifying, yes, pieces of artificial intelligence ready to consume for vertical needs, it's a future trend, yes. So, you know, on top of Disruptive Academy, my background is in the cybersecurity industry, you know, and a revolution happened, yes, because we were used to work in a market with few big players, with a big barriers to enter, and then machine learning, artificial intelligence made possible to do analysis with 1,000 times less resources, yes, and at the end, cybersecurity is about analyzing a huge amount of data and predict possible anomalies or attacks. So, yes, I really think that artificial intelligence will be applied to a lot of stuff, and companies will get to know their audience in very different angles, and this is a big step.
The key thing you said to me is this idea of needing a vertical market, because these technology companies don't know the vertical markets. You know, they know their platform, but it's a whole different business to take a platform technology and apply it. So they're looking for all sorts of distribution channels. You might call it customers because you become an intermediate customer. It could just be a vendor relationship. It doesn't have to be an equity relationship. It can be a vendor relationship, a contract, where you find you can come to these technology companies and maybe on some very good economic basis say, look, I'm going to be your customer, but you know, you have to give it to me, you know, essentially for free for 6 months so I can experiment or something. to modify it, to apply it to this niche. And maybe you can get some exclusive right for that niche for a period of time, for a geography, for Brazil. Look, I want a 6-month exclusive or a 1-year exclusive for Brazil for, bringing your cybersecurity to this kind of retail or something like that, to grocery stores, and for the company that might be based in, you can do this globally as well. It doesn't have to be with your local technology. It can be a global. You can go to a company in New York or London who's already doing this and say, hey, you haven't looked at Brazil. You can knock on their door and say, I see you're doing this in London or in, Finland. It doesn't matter. Say, I'm here in Brazil. You're not going to come here. We speak, Portuguese. Your platform's not in Portuguese. Let me localize it for you. I will localize your English platform or Finnish language platform, whatever, and I will localize it. Well, what for that? I want a 2-year exclusive, or something, or I want to own this market and a distribution relationship. You probably deal with this all the time.
Yeah, that's mandatory to do. Yes, and sometimes we see also some, unfortunately, some startups that are trying to reinvent something that is already there, and to partner with somebody and say, okay, guys, you don't have Portuguese, you don't have Italian localization. I'll localize. We will partner. Let's do an agreement. Let's watch it the next 2 years. That's definitely a way to go faster. I have a few questions from the audience now, and I'm trying to sort out the main questions to condensate. Yes, so a lot of people are asking, what do you think? I will summarize different questions. What do you think about the renewable energy? Because this is a kind of innovation that is happening and is also, we'll say, heavily sponsored by the government, by incentives. So how you see this in the future, and what is the role of like a public money into the innovation? How big data could help in development of renewable energy market?
So I'm going to ask you to give me an example, okay? Because when you say renewable, I can be thinking of solar, I can be thinking of wind, I could be thinking of biofuel. And I know Brazil has so much leadership in biofuel that that's immediately what I think of. But biofuels is a very difficult example because it's so capital intense.
Yes.
The distribution channel is so difficult. So I would ask you for what you feel is an example we can really dig into when you say, alternative energy.
Maybe we can try to talk about solar panels.
Okay, solar. So solar is much easier, right? Because in solar, you could be looking at insulation, you could be looking at service, you could be looking at business models where you finance the solar. So let's pick one. We always want to drill down to the specific, right? Yes. So you can look at solar and you say, what is my existing business? What is, again, I think this key to open innovation is looking first inside and saying, what do I already own? What do I have? What's my power? Right. And if I look at solar and, if maybe I'm a plumbing business, and I have plumbing distribution, commercial and residential in a certain geography, maybe the south of Sao Paulo or something it's a region. And my family's been in this business for 30 years or for 300 years. I don't care. And I look at solar, immediately I know I have customers, I have trucks, I have plumbers who know how to, put things together. Yes. And solar is not much different. I just need a few electricians, and and then all of a sudden I can be, a reseller. I can be a financier. Because with solar, it's so interesting because there's such a consistent value stream. So it's not just installing it and maintaining it, but you can actually, a very common business is, installing it and owning it on somebody else's property on their roof, and you lease it back to them, right? So that it's for free to them, essentially. I don't think this is original. I think this is a very common business. But you say, well, how can I get into it? if you're in a business that's some sort of utility service business like heat, water, power, air conditioning, any of those businesses could reach into solar, because that's a very easy one, I think, to look at.
Nice. Another group of questions. In the audience, there are several people involved in the, say, education. So some professors, some people that have different kind of education companies. And the question is, in your opinion, in an emerging country like Brazil, which are the biggest challenge of educational innovation?
Well, the biggest challenge. Well, let's pick a level. Right. So again, it's always about getting specific. So in general, what's the long-term trends? In the United States, again, this is all local. You have to be local in this. And maybe in Brazil, but I don't mean to be speak of things I don't know well. But a big trend is private and public in education. And I remember in Brazil, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, there was a big explosion in college education when, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was mostly state education, and they changed the rules to allow private universities. And maybe there always were private universities, but all of a sudden there were a lot of public offerings of the securities of new universities that were private for-profit universities, and this was a big growth opportunity. Well, the reason I mention this is because the trend there is public-private, right? And then the other trend we have now, of course, is exactly what we're doing, which is remote, right? It's doing it over telecommunications, and so these two converge now, right? Because we have more and more for-profit education. So the big state universities are being underfunded because governments want to save money. And we have these niche, if you will, private institutions, whether they're high schools, colleges, or universities, arise for profit. And they use telecommunications, the remote, as a very cost-efficient way to acquire large audiences for relatively very small tuitions. And this is a major disruption. And it affects everybody. It affects the students, it affects the professors, and it affects, of course, the businesses, the universities themselves. And everybody has to go through massive adoption. And we could talk about each one, but I don't think we have time for that.
Nice. Also, that's a question from me. How much? Okay, I think in all these stories, yes, sometimes there is a bit of luck. Yes, so you have the right intuition, but you are also in the right place at the right spots. I mean, now we saw with the pandemic, yes, companies delivering food always existed, yes, but obviously now, for example, I know I'm in Rome, all the restaurants are closed. It's only delivery or takeaway. Delivery companies increase their business 1,000 times. Yes, how the luck is important in innovation? Do you think that there is some statistics that I don't know, or people look for luck?
Well, I don't believe in statistics. Don't quote me. Don't tell me that. This is private conversation.
Okay. I will not tell anybody.
What I believe in is examples. Okay, so yes, luck is not everything, but luck comes to the prepared. This is not an original thought, but luck comes to prepared. So what does it mean to be prepared? So you say that there's always been the delivery companies.
Yes, not always, maybe, but
not always. So let's take two examples. One, food delivery. The other is prepared food versus food from the store. Okay. Different businesses, right?
Okay.
Food from the store. 15 years ago, maybe now, there's a big company, $100 million, venture capitalist Kleiner Perkins, created Webvan. Webvan, $100 million, totally lost. And what was it? It's now called Instacart. It's not the same business, but it's exactly the same business recreated, 15 years later in a different environment. Now, because Webvan was essentially, you called up the grocery store, gave them the order, and they showed up in 2 hours. And it even went so far that they had trucks, fully staffed, big trucks that essentially had a grocery store inside. And they would, have very quick delivery. That would be a perfect business for today. I can tell you, my son, I was just talking to him this morning. He's 38 years old. He's a younger generation. He doesn't go to the store. And he doesn't even know how much he paid for delivery. I asked him, he says, I'm waiting for my groceries. He says, I'll see you later. I'm waiting for my groceries. I said, what do you mean waiting? He said, well, they're going to be delivered. I go, what do you mean delivered? He says, Instacart. I said, so how much does that cost? So he's so embedded in this new way of buying food that I said, how much do you pay for the delivery? He said, I don't know. And it's not because he's wealthy. It's just because he thinks of the cost of delivery as part of the cost of food. It's not a separate service to him.
It's a perception, yeah.
It's a perception. So the business from 15 years ago, Webvan, that failed, was just not in the right timing, right? It was done in the bubble, in 1999, 2000, when there was not a coronavirus dilemma. So the trend was there, and Instacart or whatever will always be there now. This shift is permanent. Now, my son might go to a store again, but I don't know, not so often. You know what I mean? He's now of a generation that's always going to know, well, I don't really have to go to the store. And going to the store is going to be more for him for amusement. It's going to be more for the fun of going shopping. It's not going to be for the need. He's never going to say to himself, I need to go shopping, but it's raining and it's cold. He just won't go. He'll Webvan. He'll, Instacart. So my point is, your question was timing. Timing is very important. It's the shock. So Zoom, huge success, but Zoom existed before. And before, though, it was a choice of Skype or Zoom. Have you ever heard of Skype?
Yes.
In other words, it's gone, right? It's gone because it was acquired by Microsoft. Microsoft got hung up in transitioning Skype to Teams, right? So they're doing this Microsoft mess of reorganizing it. When they got caught with coronavirus, at that moment, they weren't prepared. Teams was sort of not so good, right? And Skype, we all understood. But Zoom had an advantage. And the advantage of Zoom was you did not need to have the user, the recipient, have any login or anything. You just needed a link and you clicked. That one little thing, where Skype was the same thing, but you needed a Skype ID. So having that one little ease of use, when you had to have mass adoption, that little difference of not needing to have a login made the difference. All of a sudden, everybody used Zoom. Even I, who used Skype for years, switched to Zoom in like a month because everybody switched at the same time. And you say, well, why didn't Microsoft grab it? They're the big company. Zoom was a nobody, but Zoom was out there. And they were out there for 2 or 3 years, sort of plunking along, trying. And all of a sudden, boom, because they had that one advantage that was right for the right time. So timing is very important. Basically, you have to be lucky.
Yes. And this is a very nice example because one single feature basically made the difference between two platforms, yes? So no registration, no user, you can click and it goes, and you can talk with B2B customers, B2C friends, doesn't matter, the same environment. Yes, that's great. That's great. And
one little feature.
Yes. And okay, that's an interesting question. More logistic question. Yes, a lot of people are getting fascinated by this discussion. Obviously, more by you than by my simple questions. Obviously, and they are asking, do you have any upcoming programs? They will be online somehow. Universities doing some online class with you about innovation, or they should come to Berkeley. That now it's very difficult to travel. How it will work in the future, and what you have planned?
Well, what we've done is we've converted our executive education, the course you took, we've converted everything to online. And these courses are different than going to the facility, but we try and bring as much of the community to the thought. But for instance, I start next week my venture capital class. Now, this is a class I'm very proud of, but it may not be for everybody. It's like innovation and venture capital combined. But I should market it right now if I should. If you don't mind, UC Berkeley, the University of California at Berkeley, the Venture Capital Executive Program. And it starts February 1 or 2, February 2, I think. And it's for 2 weeks. And it covers innovation, but from an investor perspective. So if anybody's interested in learning about how to invest money, this is specifically about investing money in innovation, that's a good course. The innovation course you took, the innovative organization, is more about how to bring the company into that space. And that's not currently on the calendar, but we're going to be putting it on the calendar. And anybody who wants to be notified as to when that's available, if you could have them, if you want to capture that information and pass it on to me, I'll make sure that they're notified. But these courses, we have structured them so they're like they're 3 to 4 hours a day, not 8 hours a day. You can't do that. It's 3 to 4 hours a day. And we took a 1 week course and we typically make it over 2 weeks, right? So it's, but it's not over, 6 months. It's over 2 weeks, and we will welcome everybody. But of course, our programs will be open in Berkeley again as soon as we can. And we think for the fall, we'll be online. We'll be face to face again.
That's great. For me, it was like a great experience. Yeah, I think what was very interesting about your program is that when you go back. So, I was living in Moscow, so I made a very long flight to come to Berkeley. It was a full, very intensive week because on the day you are in university and on the night you have assignments to do. So it was very immersive. When I come back, it's not only that I learned something. It's like you get some skills and I use them now, yes, with my team. So you learn tools to become a small Professor Jerome Engel for your team, and I think that's the great part. Yeah. That's the great part. It's very useful. Yes, it's very useful to put it in practice. Yes. So we have the last 5 minutes, and I wanted to ask you: do you have? I don't know. Okay, 2 questions. One from me, one from the audience. We will shot them together. One, we all read your biography. You are an innovator, venture capitalist, and entrepreneur. If you would have to describe yourself with one word only, which one would it be? And the second one is: do you have a one suggestion to close, like for our audience, like if you want to innovate from tomorrow, start to think like this, start to do this? Yes.
Yeah. 2 things. The one word, I'm sorry. I have a word. It came to mind. It's friend. In other words, what I've learned, my life has always been, this sounds very immodest. I apologize. But really, I'm not such an innovator myself. I have founded a business or 2 or 3. Actually, one was very, very successful, but the others were not bad. But this is different. The people who really found new businesses are different. I'm not that person. I always did it in partnership, and I only did it because it was a good idea and I wanted to do it. But what I am is more of a professor, meaning a friend of people who are willing to take that risk. And so, I'm old enough now that I can reflect back over the years. I think that's what I am. And the one thing I would recommend to your clients and to your audience, maybe is to think first of how to be a friend of entrepreneurs or people thinking about taking risks or new ideas. There are 2 ways to react when somebody has a new idea. And I see 2 different styles. One style I call the MBA style, which is not the good style. And the MBA style sort of and picks it apart. What's, attacking the idea. Well, why do you think that's so good? We have this, we have that, negative ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other style is like, and thinks of the positive. Well, whatever your idea, it may not be the best idea, but if it was true, and giving the benefit of the doubt and saying, okay, if you're right, then what are the implications of that? And how might that benefit your customers? How might it benefit me? How might it benefit the world? What would you need to test? That's the critical question. What do you need to test about your idea to see if you're right, even a little bit right? Sometimes I have a friend who asked the question this way. My friend asked the question, what do I need to believe? In other words, to believe your idea, you say this, you say that, you have to say that. For me to invest or for me to believe in your idea, what are the critical assumptions that you're making that I have to believe? And then that's what you should test. And that's what you can reflect back, being a friend. Let's test these ideas. And you can partner with this person in testing their ideas. You don't have to do any work. You don't have to write a check. You don't have to invest. You can just be a thought partner and a friend to that person and incrementally learn about their opportunities, be helpful. And if it leads to something that you can participate in, either by investing or by partnering with your business, bringing your customers, fine. But you can get there over time. It's not a negotiation that you come in and negotiate a deal. It may be learning incrementally, building relationship, and over time, one or two of these relationships yield transactions where you have innovation for your company.
Nice. That's a great advice. I fully agree with you. So we are wrapping up. Yes, we have 1 minute. So I wanted to use 1 minute to say thank you very much for spending this time with us. It was really insightful and helpful. I wanted to say thank you to all the people that connected from very different places, because we have people from Europe, from Brazil. So we have a very broad audience. And for Felipe and all the colleagues that organized it, Luana, Helena, so a lot of people work to make this work smoothly as it happens. And I really look forward to see you in Berkeley in the nearest future and to attend your classes once again. So really, thank you very much.
It's so great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.